Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and we go back to the Marvel series for what was one of my favorite stories when I was younger, with some of the best art in the series by an artist that you will recognize in the modern day. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler. The issue we're looking at this time is number 92, entitled The Dream, kind of a surreal cover going on there. This is written by Mary Jo Duffy. I'll withhold the name of the artist, at least for now, for this issue. We'll come back to that as a major point here. You find this these days in the pages of Star Wars Omnibus a long time ago, Volume 5, the last volume in this series. At this point, we're down to only 15 more issues left of this series after this issue, before the entire regular Marvel run is over. Now, this is a story that I had back in the day when I was a kid, and I always found it kind of surreal but very cool. And even reading it now, it still remains surreal and very cool. The idea is that Luke has been having some dreams. And in this dream, which seems to be a recurring dream, he is constantly facing Vader. Right, we have this great starting pose for him, with another of those iconic outfits I usually think of when I think of him in the modern EU. And he's facing off with Vader. Vader's about to remove his helmet, and just as he's about to remove his helmet, Luke wakes up from the dream. Okay? Now, it moves on to a discussion about some of the things that we've learned in previous issues about how it looks like the Empire is back, or at least some bits and pieces like the slave trade are back again. So, we're a little bit concerned about what's going to go on. We have references here to Wookiee World and Figurehead when Leia notes that she found slavers at work on Hardessa as well, and they were working openly with the aid of Imperial stormtroopers. And then, of course, Han is also making the reference there to what happened with the Wookiees. We learned that despite all reports to the contrary, the slave trade was starting up there again. Now, Luke is kind of distracted throughout all this, and he does explain to Leia about how this dream is upsetting him at this point. And again, they have another discussion about not wanting the truth to be out just yet about who their father really was. And we see more. Luke is now training other new recruits, like Barney, the guy there on the left, and Kiro, that we've met in previous stories. Kiro back in Diplomacy, and of course he's come back more recently. Barney there from The Apprentice, which was annual number 3. They're talking about, the different things that they're being trained, and at one point, Dracos, one of the dragon-style apprentices here, or trainees here, says, when are you going to start teaching us to use the Force? And Luke essentially says that, well, it may have even been Akbar's idea when he had me do this, but I'm not going to train you. It's too easy to abuse. Not everybody has the talent for it, etc., etc. I'm just not a good teacher. I can't do this, despite no matter how much you guys want it. It's just not going to work. We again see more of the dream, and we see the new arrival of an individual named Denon, who is there apparently looking for help for Denon's planet that is being overrun by remnants of the Empire. They don't get off to really a good start, but we learn more about, how they want to help. The Rebel Alliances, or the Alliance of Free Planets at this point, is not going to send a lot of help, but at least a small team will be able to go, Luke and Leia and so forth, along with Barney as one of the members there. And we get a brief recall by Barney of back on his home planet of Belderone, how back in the 3rd annual we saw his friend Flint wind up being picked up by the Empire and joining the Empire after seeing his mother die during the assault there, the same assault during which Barney wound up joining the Rebels and going off to try to make a difference in his own way. So they go off to the planet, but en route, Luke has another vision, another dream, in which he's talking to Yoda and talking to Obi-Wan, only to realize that it's, well, when he sees the spirit of Anakin, right, Sebastian Shaw Anakin here, he realizes, wait a second, this can't be Vader if Anakin Skywalker is there, so who is it? And he sees the true form of what he's been dreaming about in this Force premonition, this sort of dark knight. Dark, yes, and in a knight-style suit, like a suit of shining armor, so to speak. They wind up reaching their Denon's home planet, only to wind up finding that the Imperials are already there and using a weapon on the ground to shoot at incoming vehicles. Leia also discovers, while searching records there, that Denon died previously. 2 years ago, Denon died while trying to protect the planet. She winds up eventually revealing that, this is not Denon, this is Denon's twin sister. We'll wind up seeing as the story plays out, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. So they're out there, Lando and Luke and supposedly Denon are out there. They get attacked by Imperials who are there, and the Imperials are led by the man in the armor. Okay? Now, in his vision, Luke has been able to lift up the face of the armor, but it wasn't shown to us right as he was waking up to see who it is in this armor. And when he finally reveals himself, it's Flint. Yes, Barney's friend, the one who joined up with Vader back in annual number 3, The Apprentice, which is really cool because I never expected to see that character again. As the others go for help, and it's revealed that Denon is actually Vila, right, the princess, Luke duels with Flint, though of course Luke overmatches him in most respects. We get this really awesome kind of move here where you have them attacking. You see the different shots of other parts of the attack there shown in sort of the shadowy green and yellow there. Really cool fight that's going on. A stormtrooper steps in and shoots at Luke, winging him, injuring him, which kind of prematurely ends the fight. Only as he's about to wipe out the rebels, or try to, Barney confronts him, his old friend. You know, you're going to kill all the rebels? Fine. Start with me, because I don't think you can do it. And this finally sort of brings Flint back to reality, that what he's doing is wrong and isn't what he wanted before his mother's death. He's sort of been corrupted by the Empire. At which point, a stormtrooper tries to kill him for betraying them. In jumps Vela to try to save him and stop the stormtrooper because there's been too much killing already. Stormtrooper blasts Vela. She will die. And as bombardment is about to happen on the planet from that cannon, Flint does his sort of last act of heroism by using a remote to blow up the cannon, thereby freeing the planet. He drops his gear and then sort of goes off on his own. We find that Vila dies, but she's at least reunited with Denon in the Force afterwards, where they, in the Force, apparently are going to be able to train or at least spend time with the spirit of Yoda. So, just like Denon had wanted to be a Jedi, and Vila sort of wanted to be a Jedi or be trained by Luke possibly to help the planet to follow Denon's dream once she sort of became Denon in his place, at least now there's sort of that chance for the dream to be fulfilled within that sort of dreamscape, the reality of the Force. Now, we later find out in the continuity is that Flint here got some training by Vader, which we kind of knew looking at what we saw in The Apprentice. But apparently, Vader intended on Lumaya and Flint, thanks to, I believe it's Abel Pena's work in The Emperor's Pawns, thanks to these two both being trained by Vader, they were supposed to eventually duke it out to see which one's going to essentially be the apprentice to Vader at that point. Only Vader dies. And these two clash, and rather than one being wiped out by the other, Lumaya comes out dominant, and she's the one who at this point has been training Flint. She also, we'll find, was training Carnor Jax a little while later on. So we have this connection to Lumaya, only not one that we knew about at the time. I think it adds a little more depth to this because we're already seeing Lumaya coming back in these storylines, so it's kind of cool to see that Flint has a tie-in to her, even though it was not something we expected back, you know, in the 80s. But very cool to see Flint back again. A fun issue, a great, you know, kind of battle sequences and whatnot, good stuff. This is the first time we've seen a lightsaber duel between two Force users in the series since Return of the Jedi, or actually in the EU, I think, in general, because most of the time it was usually just Orm Tag who Luke was fighting with the lightsaber, and he wasn't Force sensitive. He had just trained himself to use a lightsaber and such. So very cool to see that, and cool to see the artwork. The original artwork of this story was done, and it's really some good artwork, by Jan Duursema. That's right. This is the single Marvel issue to be illustrated by Jan Duursema, who later becomes sort of infamous and famous at the same time within Star Wars circles for doing Republic so well and becoming the co-creator and artist for most of Legacy and Dawn of the Jedi. So she gets her debut in Star Wars well before we tend to think of it in the pages of the Marvel series, very much like Randy Stradley with the Alderaan Factor. So very cool to see, and cool to see her name in print. I had forgotten about that until I was rereading these recently here for the show. So, with all that said, is this issue, The Dream, an essential read? Honestly, I guess I could say no, but I don't want to. You know, it's such a good story. It does tie into what we got with the Apprentice, you know, the issue earlier. I think I said that one was one that you should probably check out. So here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to split decision this one. It's not essential for modern readers. We don't need to know about Flint. But for a Marvel reader, I think having read The Apprentice, you should want to read this issue, and it's really cool to see this current Star Wars talent showing up in that issue. And also, again, pushes forward this idea of why Luke can't train Jedi. So I would say it's an essential read. Not quite as essential as most, but there are so many good elements to this, you'd be doing yourself a disservice to not read this issue if you're reading the old Marvel series. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.